It was a bright and warm afternoon in Miami, during May 2025, when President Donald Trump stepped onto the stage at the convention center for yet another one of his political rallies. His supporters roared with excitement as American flags waved proudly overhead, and the venue buzzed with the electric atmosphere typical of Trump-era gatherings. Among the crowd sat Marcus Washington, a 28-year-old African-American student from Harvard University. Positioned in the fifth row, he wore a subtle Burkina Faso flag pin on the lapel of his sharp navy blazer. Marcus had secured his spot at the rally through a Republican friend, but his intentions were far from aligned with the rest of the audience. A graduate in international relations and now pursuing his master's in African politics, Marcus had grown into a passionate supporter of Ibrahim Traoré after witnessing the Burkina president's iconic response to Kamala Harris just months prior. "My fellow Americans," Trump thundered, launching into his speech with the same bluster he was known for. "We are living through difficult times, yes, but also times filled with tremendous opportunity." With every phrase, the crowd exploded into applause and cheers. Marcus, however, remained composed, eyes fixed on the stage, silently waiting. He anticipated Trump would soon steer the conversation toward foreign affairs and, more specifically, Africa, as he often did. "You know," Trump continued, gesturing animatedly, "there are leaders out there who think they can stand up to America. Some of them young, untested, and arrogant enough to believe they know better than us." Marcus' jaw tightened. He knew precisely whom Trump was hinting at, even without a name being said. For anyone following global politics, the jab at Ibrahim Traoré was unmistakable. Pacing the stage with the assurance of a seasoned performer, Trump went on, "Some of these African nations are run by young men who believe they can teach the United States a lesson." The crowd erupted in boos. "But let me be absolutely clear," Trump declared. Nobody lectures America on democracy." Marcus's fists clenched. The insult was no longer veiled. It was obvious now, Trump was openly referring to these little military dictators think that giving a few clever answers on TV makes them qualified to challenge the world's most powerful nation. Trump sneered. The phrase "little dictators" reverberated across the hall like a slap. Marcus couldn't stay silent. He had studied the reforms and transformations Traoré had spearheaded in Burkina Faso, reducing poverty, building schools, countering terrorism with bold leadership. Dismissing such a man with that term was an insult not just to Traoré but to all of Africa. "You want to know what I'd say to one of these kids trying to lecture me?" Trump paused, grinning. "I'd tell them to do their homework before speaking to the President of the United States." Laughter rippled through the room, followed by wild applause. That was the moment Marcus made his decision. He could not, in good conscience, sit idle. This was his moment not just to speak for Traoré, but to stand for the principles of dignity, truth, and justice he had cultivated during his time at Harvard. "And another thing," Trump added, "we're not going to take moral lectures from countries that can barely feed their own people." That sentence was the breaking point. Marcus rose abruptly, his tall frame drawing immediate attention. A few nearby attendees turned to look, sensing tension in the air. Dressed sharply and carrying himself with poise, Marcus took a steady breath, ready for a moment that would shape the rest of his life. Slowly standing to his full 6 feet 1 inch height, he towered over the seated crowd. People began whispering and staring, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. "Mr. President," Marcus called out, his voice sliced through the hall like a sudden gust. The room fell still. Trump stopped mid-sentence and turned toward the source of the voice. He squinted past the spotlight's glare, raising a hand to see. "Who said that?" he asked into the microphone, his tone sharp with annoyance. "It was me, sir," Marcus replied firmly. Marcus Washington, Harvard student. The name and title triggered a stir in the audience. Some began to jeer. Others sat, stunned, intrigued. Trump, a master of controlling the room, faced his most unexpected challenge yet. A smirk played across Trump's face. "Oh, a Harvard student, what a shock," he said, prompting laughter to ripple through the crowd. "Let me guess, kid, you came to give me a lecture on politics." Marcus drew in a deep breath. Time was not on his side. Security was already moving. "No, Mr. President," he replied firmly. "I'm here to speak about truth and justice." The word justice echoed sharply, met instantly with boos from the crowd. Trump signaled to the guards who had already spotted Marcus and were beginning to approach. "Security," Trump spoke into the microphone. "Please remove this young man. Looks like Harvard forgot to teach him some basic manners." But Marcus wasn't done. With the guards still weaving their way through the rows, he knew he had just a few moments left, a final window to be heard. "Mr. President," Marcus shouted, raising his voice above the crowd noise. "You just disrespected one of Africa's most respected leaders." Trump froze for a beat, irritated yet visibly intrigued. The room was split, some still booing, others now curious. "Ibrahim Traoré is not a dictator," Marcus said, pushing his words out with controlled urgency. He's a Democrat. He cut poverty in Burkina Faso by 23% in just 3 years. The statistics hung in the air. A few people stopped booing. Caught off guard by the precision of the claim, he built 847 new schools, reduced infant mortality by 31%, made Burkina Faso the safest country in the Sahel. Marcus fired off the facts quickly, but his tone was measured, his clarity striking. Trump, not used to hearing hard data from hecklers at his rallies, looked momentarily thrown off. "Kid," he said into the mic, narrowing his eyes. "You're standing there defending a military coup leader?" "No, sir," Marcus fired back. "I'm standing up for a man who rose during crisis but governs democratically. He's held 3 free elections with 89% voter participation." A murmur swept through the crowd. Even among Trump's supporters, some appeared genuinely surprised. And most importantly, Marcus continued, voice rising, he's never disrespected the American people, not once. He has only stood up for his country's dignity when he was personally attacked. By now, security had reached him. But Trump raised a hand, halting them. He was clearly intrigued. This wasn't a protester with a sign. This was something else. "Do you actually believe all that?" Trump asked, his tone shifting, less dismissive, more curious. Marcus seized the moment. "Yes, Mr. President. I believe it because I studied it. I studied the facts." His voice projected across the hall with conviction. Ibrahim Traoré holds a master's in public administration and is working toward an MBA in economic development. He governs during the day and studies at dawn. Gasps and whispers stirred through the audience. Even Trump, who often praised academic credentials when convenient, raised an eyebrow. "Harvard taught me to verify before I judge," Marcus continued, and the data from Burkina Faso is compelling. GDP growth, 7.2% last year. Foreign investment, up 400%. A man in the back shouted, "This kid's making it up." But Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm not lying. You can check the World Bank, the IMF, even the CIA. It's all public record." The mention of the CIA drew a visible reaction from Trump, his brow lifted, intrigued. "American reports confirm it," Marcus said steadily. "Burkina Faso is now more stable than some of our own so-called allies." Trump stepped closer, to the edge of the stage, narrowing the distance. "Are you seriously telling me this young African is a better leader than the nations we call friends?" "I'm telling you, he leads with results, not empty words," Marcus replied, unwavering. "He's turned one of the world's poorest nations into a rising success." The crowd remained split, some still jeering, others falling into a stunned hush. And then Marcus looked directly at the President of the United States. "As the leader of the world's most powerful democracy," he said with firm resolve, "you should be the first to recognize effective leadership, regardless of age or origin." A heavy silence settled over the convention center. No slogans, no laughter, just the weight of a truth that could not be easily dismissed. Trump stared at Marcus, his expression a curious blend of irritation, intrigue, and reluctant admiration. He didn't speak for nearly 10 full seconds, an eternity in the high-octane world of political rallies. The crowd fell into an unusual hush, waiting with bated breath for his response. Marcus stood his ground. His heart pounded against his chest, but his eyes remained locked on the President of the United States. "You know, kid," Trump finally said, his voice lower, more measured, even thoughtful, "I like people who stand up for what they believe." There was a ripple of murmurs through the crowd, surprised by the unexpected shift in tone. "But tell me something," Trump went on, narrowing his gaze. "If this Ibrahim Traoré is really as impressive as you say, why did Kamala Harris go after him?" Marcus cracked a small, confident smile, his first of the afternoon. "Because she miscalculated, Mr. President. She underestimated a young leader and ended up paying the price publicly and globally. She embarrassed herself." Trump nodded slowly, absorbing the words. He remembered. "And what do you think I should do?" Kamala Harris Trump asked, after that very clearly testing the young man's confidence. Marcus replied without hesitation. "Invite Ibrahim Traoré to Washington." "Sir," he said boldly, "show the world that the United States supports real results no matter who delivers them. It would be a smart, diplomatic move." The suggestion was bold, yet clever. A few claps scattered through the crowd. Trump tilted his head, interested. "You studied politics at Harvard?" "Yes, Mr. President," Marcus replied. "International relations, with a focus on modern African affairs." Trump nodded, his curiosity growing. "What else do you know about this Traoré guy?" Marcus took a breath and answered. "He's reduced attacks in his country by over 60%, and he's done it with very little outside help. His strategies are worth learning from." That last point caught Trump's full attention. "Keep talking, Harvard kid," he said. Marcus could feel the moment's shift. "Mr. President, Ibrahim Traoré is the kind of leader America should support. He's young, smart, and focused on fighting corruption. He's not against the West, he simply asks for mutual respect." Trump slowly walked across the stage, thinking, "But he's a soldier, right? Didn't he take power by force? Trump asked. Yes, sir, Marcus said honestly, but what's important is what he did after. He didn't take money for himself. He focused on helping people. His wife is still a teacher. They live simply. The audience responded with soft approval. And more importantly, Marcus added, he's already announced a date for elections. He's not trying to hold on to power forever. Trump stopped in his tracks. Elections? Yes, in the year 2027, Marcus said. He's promised to serve only one term. After that, he plans to step down. The crowd was divided. Some supporters respected Marcus's facts, others remained unsure. You really believe he'll keep that promise? Trump asked, raising an eyebrow. Based on what he's done so far, yeah, Marcus said firmly. Everything he promised, he delivered. The schools built, the hospitals, completed on time. Trump looked at Marcus again. And why do you care so much about this African leader, kid? Marcus took a breath. Because he gives people hope, Mr. President. Hope that young leaders can make a real difference. Hope that African nations can grow without being controlled. Hope that honesty and ability matter more than age or background. The entire room went quiet. Everyone was listening. Trump could feel the shift too. You've got me thinking, Harvard, kid, he said slowly. Maybe I judged this Traoré guy too fast. Gasps spread through the crowd. Trump rarely admitted when he changed his mind. He looked back at Marcus. Tell me, if I invited this leader to Washington, would he come? Marcus smiled. I'm sure he would, Mr. President. Ibrahim Traoré believes in respectful partnerships, even with America. Trump nodded, clearly considering it. And would you help make it happen? He asked. It would be the greatest honor of my life. Sir, Marcus said without pause. The audience began to applaud, quiet at first, then stronger. What started as a moment of tension had turned into something bigger. Trump turned to the crowd with a slight smile. You never know, he said. Maybe today, we built a bridge instead of a wall. Then he looked back at Marcus. I've always believed that America should work with strong leaders, no matter where they come from. The crowd responded with more applause. And maybe, he added, it's time we show the world that we recognize true talent wherever it is. Marcus could hardly process what was happening. What began as a bold interruption was morphing into what might become a historic diplomatic breakthrough. Then Trump spoke directly into the microphone. Security officers, rather than escort this young man out. How about escorting him to my box? I'd like to continue this conversation. The crowd erupted. Cheers, claps, even whistles filled the space. Marcus, still visibly trembling from adrenaline, was now gently led away by the very same security team who had been ready moments earlier to drag him out of the event. But now, he was headed to the VIP box next to the President of the United States. Inside that exclusive suite overlooking the convention hall, Marcus found himself seated only feet from Donald Trump, surrounded by senior advisors and cabinet members. The surreal nature of the moment weighed on him. So, Harvard boy, Trump said, cracking open a Coke and pouring it over ice. Convince me once and for all why this Traoré should be a partner for the United States. Marcus composed himself quickly. Mr. President, Burkina Faso has the largest untapped gold reserves in West Africa, he began. It also holds significant deposits of manganese, zinc, and has vast agricultural potential. But here's the key: Traoré doesn't just want to export raw resources, he wants to industrialize. Trump leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Go on, he said. He's developing special economic zones. Marcus continued, and offering incentives for companies to process materials locally. That means jobs for Burkina Faso and supply chains for American companies. The U.S. Secretary of Commerce, seated nearby, began scribbling notes rapidly. What's our edge against China and France? He asked. Marcus didn't miss a beat. Traoré values transparency and ethical practices. American firms have a clear advantage there. Plus he's fluent in English and openly admires the U.S. education system. Trump grinned. Interesting. What about security? He added. The Sahel's a mess. That's exactly why we need strong partners. Marcus said. Traoré has cut terrorist attacks by 65% without massive foreign intervention. His localized approach could be replicated in other unstable regions. The defense secretary chimed in. Are you suggesting boots on the ground? No, sir, Marcus clarified. Not troops, just intelligence sharing and training. Support, no direct engagement, just strategic cooperation. Trump tapped a finger against the table, visibly intrigued. And politically, what's the upside for me? He asked, cutting to the core. Marcus didn't hesitate. You'd be the president who spotted one of Africa's most promising leaders before anyone else. You'd show vision where others saw chaos. It would be a unique diplomatic legacy. 3 months later, something unprecedented unfolded. President Ibrahim Traoré touched down at Andrews Air Force Base on an official visit to the United States. Among those in the receiving party stood Marcus Washington, now appointed special advisor to the White House on African affairs. "I never imagined that moment in Miami would lead to this," he confided to his former Harvard professor, who had flown in to witness the occasion. "Sometimes," the professor replied with pride in his voice, "speaking truth with courage changes the course of history." In the Oval Office, Trump and Traoré sat together, talking like longtime colleagues. "You know, Ibrahim," Trump said, with a chuckle, "that Harvard kid made me realize how wrong I was about you." Traoré smiled. "Marcus Washington is a remarkable young man," he replied. "America should be proud of him." "We are," Trump answered. "In fact, he's going to be our next ambassador to Burkina Faso." The partnership that followed was nothing short of revolutionary. American firms invested over $8 billion in Burkina Faso, creating 200,000 jobs in the process. In return, the U.S. gained privileged access to strategic minerals and a trusted partner in the Sahel region. Marcus, now 29, became a vital bridge between two continents. In media interviews, he often credited that unforgettable day in Miami as the turning point. "I learned something important," he would say, "that when truth is spoken with respect and courage, it can move mountains." Trump, for his part, frequently cited his partnership with Traoré at future rallies as proof of his flexibility and instincts. "I listen to smart people, regardless of their age," he told cheering crowds. At Harvard, Marcus Washington's name became legendary. His story inspired countless students to believe that one voice, if used wisely, can change the world. And in the heart of Ouagadougou, murals appeared, showing the iconic moment a young American stood up for his African hero before the most powerful man in the world, a reminder that truth, courage, and dignity know no borders.